On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, the GTA 6 delay debate rolls on. Are multiple cities incoming? And details on what could become Stranger and Freak style missions. It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Welcome and hello to episode 17 of GTA 6 o'clock. I am James Jarvis and joining me today is, of course, Dan Dawkins. Hello, Dan.
Hello, James, and welcome everyone if it's your first time to GTA 6 o'clock, the weekly GTA 6 sleuthing show.
Yes, and the countdown to new info we started a few weeks ago rolls on. We think trailer or screenshots might be coming in as little as 45 days. Or is it, Dan, because breaking news item number 1 is a GTA delay incoming? Now, this has come from a Kotaku news story, correct?
Yeah, Kotaku news story. Kotaku, just a couple of days ago, and to credit Kotaku, they've actually updated this story since they first published it. I think when they published it, there was limited details, and they've added more as time has gone on. But, I mean, as we'll discuss, some of those details and sources do lack a little bit of depth, perhaps. So essentially, what Kotaku have said is, according to their sources, they feel like there's a strong possibility that GTA 6 could slip from what is a planned Q1 2025 release to late 2025, and a contingency plan of it could even be 2026. That's the very top line of the story. Now, I would say let's drill into the detail, but actually there isn't much more detail. But is there anything else you would add to that outline, James, to sort of help flesh out the story a bit?
No, I think that's essentially it. And as you say, I think there's going to be more of these stories, definitely, as we get closer to the investor call in a couple of months, and then obviously closer to a reported release date. But it's a not much, I'm going to say, meat on the horse, the catchphrase of the show, to this story, just because none of the sources are corroborated or backed up by anything other than we have heard from a source, which obviously you know, in journalism, you want to keep your sources anonymous and don't want to throw people under the bus. But at the same time, it does make it quite easy to say, a source has told me this thing and now it is fact. And how close to that source is to the project, what relations they have to the ongoing development or Rockstar or Take-Two or anything, like is really hard to discern from this kind of thing. So, it's a thing to be taken with a pinch of salt, which we will see probably very soon with another report that has just come out as well.
Yeah, so I was going to get onto the other report just to pull apart the Kotaku story a little bit. And I don't want to pick on names or authors particularly from people I don't know or I'm not familiar enough to offer a sort of candid assessment. So the Kotaku author is a guy called Zach Zwiezen, or Zwiezen. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong. Now, he was told, he says, I was told by sources who wish to remain anonymous to avoid possible retaliation that the GTA 6 soundtrack has started playing as I was speaking.
Oh dear, my laptop's having a bit of a meltdown. What did the sources tell you, Dan?
Not that. He says he was told by sources who wished to remain anonymous. Was that the Rockstar someone's talking about you alarm?
Yeah, no, it's the Oscars playoff. I've had enough of that.
But he says they wish to remain anonymous because development GTA 6 has, quote, started falling behind. Now, the thing I wanted to pull out was Kotaku is a website that people love to hate. Some love, many hate. Some people think it's one of the last bastions of great investigative journalism. Others think it's sort of a trash-raking, gossipy. All of these things are possibly true. Like, what I would say is, knowing the lineage of editors who have worked at Kotaku, and I know they've recently lost an EIC and there's rumours of them becoming a guides website, etc., etc., etc. Once upon a time, and I would think it's true today, is Kotaku still prides itself, I think, on the evidential nature of its reporting and its ability to stand up its reporting. So what I wanted to say was, if they've spoken to sources, I actually believe they've spoken to sources. Like, I believe that, right? I think that's true. I think it would be a shuddering low for them to have invented sources, right? And as much fun as it is to dunk on Kotaku for their opinions, don't confuse that with their practices and sort of journalism ethics. I think you might not agree with the way they see the world, but I think in terms of them reporting that they have actually spoken to sources, I think that's real. The bit that's obviously not stated and not verified is, who are these sources? Like, are they people who would genuinely know what's going on at Rockstar? Or are they, and we discussed this yesterday, could they be junior level artists or playtesters who may or may not be siloed from decision making within the wider Rockstar North group? We don't know. What I do believe is that I don't believe Kotaku would have run this story had they not had an inkling that people who genuinely would know are saying there's a possibility of a delay. What I'm not sure about is how verifiable or trustworthy the sources themselves are. That's for Kotaku, between Kotaku and God, and what they can't disclose. Yeah. And I know they can't disclose it because they're right. If I came out and said things about my company, I'd be in a hell of a lot of trouble. So they obviously have to protect their source. I think that's fine. The bit that's less clear is, like, who are these sources and are they trustworthy? Are there ulterior motives? For example, and the article goes on to talk about and kind of conflates the fact at the start of April, Rockstar are ordering all of the development team back to the office. And the reason for that is they say security reasons and, to get help with productivity. It will essentially be to get this MFing game finished, right? So I think it's inferred that they're entering a degree of crunch mode. And in fact, in the Kotaku article now, and this has actually been added since I originally read it, they talk a bit about the source saying they feared the studio. This basically saying, I'm paraphrasing, the studio culture had got quite good compared to what it used to be, but I fear it's returning to crunch. Now, I mean this with the greatest goodwill, like, no shit, Sherlock. Like this game has been in development for over a decade. I dare say there were periods within that decade that felt fairly chill and mellow. And I say this as someone who's worked. James and I made a broadcast show we put out, right, literally last week to the world. The weeks leading to that, there was some crunch. It was hard. We were angry. Like, it's not nice, right? And I think people in that zone speak out. And I think there's an ulterior motive, potentially, is what I'm saying, in terms of what they're saying, linked to the fact they're annoyed about being asked to return to the office. I understand that, and I'm not judging it, but you have to see that as a lens to view this. Tittle tattle.
Yeah, I wouldn't, if I was working at Rockstar developing this game, it wouldn't be unexpected to me for them to say there is going to be a time when you're going to have to come in and we need to just get this done. And that period is obviously now. So I don't think that's much of a surprise. But I do agree with, even when we spoke to Mike York, who's an ex-animator at Rockstar, saying, I was given my list of things to do for that day, that week, and that's basically all I did. You can see a world where somebody working on the game has got one of those lists, and that list has now got pretty long. And they're like, oh, I don't think we're going to be able to do this in time for whatever the date is, let's say March 2025. And those might be the kind of people who are talking to reporters going, you know what, my list has gone from 20 things that I was uncomfortable with but thought we could do it, and now it's at 40, and I don't think we're going to hit that window. But it's okay because there are contingencies of a delay or an even longer delay for like into 2026.
And there's a difference between if your source is, let's for example say, the head of Rockstar North, who's ultimately responsible for delivering that game to a certain quality and on time. He would be, I would say, an exceptionally good source in terms of saying, are they going to pull the plug on the release date or not, right? Now, there's another argument that maybe actually the people lower down have got a better view of it. It all depends on the quality of information flow and the symmetry or asymmetry of that information within the company, because there's thousands of people who work on this game. It might be that certain departments are not privy to things that senior management are thinking about, that they know they might say, something, an ace we've got in the hole is we're going to cut this section or these levels, but we haven't told the team yet. Or we're going to change these assets, or we're going to drop this feature, or we're going to do this thing, because in the perpetual and ongoing balance, these things it's more important to ship on time than it is to have this feature. Or we'll patch this in and we'll not do that. This is a constant moving thing, and some people will ultimately be responsible for making the does it ship on this date or not decision, and others won't. So depending on where you are in that workflow equation, you might have a different perspective of, is this on time? Again, this is not me discrediting the sources. It might be, they've definitely got a clearer view than me, like they're actually working on the game. But, within giant companies, not all sources are created equal. And even within that, different sources will have different opinions. So one worker might say it's impossible because, maybe they're biased to negativity and or they're incredibly pragmatic. Or another worker who's optimistic and or has got experience might say, it looks bad, but we're honestly going to kill all this stuff and it's easy.
Which I guess leads us nicely into the second report that came out on the 25th, which was Monday of this week.
Yeah.
From.
Oh well, do you want me to jump in, because there's
Yes.
there's a new report from a chap at Insider Gaming, a senior editor called Mike Straw, and so Mike Straw took to Twitter to kind of debunk the Kotaku story. So he quote tweeted or quote X'd the Kotaku story, which said GTA 6 production reportedly falling behind, Rockstar urges staff to return to office. Mike Straw said, saying this again since people are still running with it, I've reached out to multiple sources and was told the game was, quote, on schedule, and that any suggestion of a delay at this point in development is, quote, pure conjecture. So that's what Mike Straw is saying. Now, my questions are, and I mean this again with great goodwill, who is Mike Straw? Now, you might say the same of me. That's fine. And, I don't know enough of his providence in journalism to say, when Mike Straw speaks, you listen. Right? I don't know enough of that. Neither am I saying the opposite. I'm not saying, who's this turkey, forget what he says. But he is sufficiently emboldened to go out on Twitter. He is a professional journalist who works for Insider Gaming, and he's saying, my sources, again, no idea who they are telling him this report is bogus. But I saw a subsequent report from Mike Straw, and he was also saying, basically, because people got excited because Mike Straw told them what they wanted to hear.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's all going to be fine. And people went, yeah, we told you, Kotaku, because I've always hated you anyway. So then Mike Straw actually piped up to try and correct some of them, and he said, well, actually, there's been nothing to confirm Q1 2025 right now. The only thing officially announced is a 2025 release. To which I say, correct. They have only officially said coming 2025. But as we've discussed relentlessly on this show, follow the money. It currently points to Q1 2025. It could change. So that would be my perspective on it. So I don't know what to say about how reliable Mike Straw is, and I don't want to say this either way, and I don't know what your take is, but...
I think this is a classic, like, we've got two sides of the coin here, haven't we? We've got one person going, I've heard from my guys that it's going to be delayed, and another person going, well, I've heard from mine that it's not. And I guess the ultimate thing is you, dear listeners, and us, you get to make up your mind on which side of the fence you're going to fall on this very particular debate, which will absolutely roll on for the rest of this year, no matter what happens during the financial call, or if there is any leaning one way or the other, or we get any kind of tidbits of information in that call. There are still going to be, I would say, constant stories about, is it coming out? Is it delayed?
Yeah.
And there will be numerous people quoting sources and things going, yeah, I've heard that it's actually right on time. And if that continues to happen, I then guess there's going to be more people going, well, you know what, guys, I've seen it. And I can't tell you anything about it, but it's looking real good. And that will continue to happen up until it's, publicly shown. Because, for some people, that's a nice little bit of, 5 minutes of Twitter or X fame of going, I've seen it, everyone quoted me and said, I said it was good, Don't do that, listeners. But, at some point, it will be out there, and more people, as it gets closer to launch, will see it, which is part of the reason Rockstar are bringing everyone back into the office, to try and minimize that risk of people seeing it and being able to tweet and go, I just went round Dave's house and I just saw it. It was just on. And here's a little screenshot of a really blurry... It's weird that everyone has HD camera phones these days, but yeah, all the leaking shots are really grainy, blurry images. If you're going to do it, at least take a good picture, would be my advice.
Yeah, look, and you've got to separate what we know to be factually true versus my source says, conjecture, etc., etc. That's always going to happen. We do know Rockstar are returning to office in April. That does imply that they're getting their heads down to finish this game. We know that. We knew that. We also know there's an earnings call coming in like mid-May. That is the most public-facing, and at that point in time will be the most truthful thing you can see or read about GTA, even indirectly, because they cannot lie about money to the city in a way that puts their share price up or down. They just cannot. It will be ruinous for them, right? Now, it's possible they might say something with the best intentions and they turn out to be false, because they might believe the game's going to ship, and then 3 months out, someone on the team goes, we said we were going to do it. We can't.
Yeah.
And they can't control that. But I think that's where they have to be as truthful as possible, even in the uncertainty, come the earnings call. So until such time, we will be in this slightly unknowable situation of having to... And the Kotaku piece basically says all realities are available.
Yeah.
It's either going to be delayed, which one source says. They're publicly committing to Q1 2025, which aligns with what we've said about the earnings to this point. Or it could be 2026. Again, no shit, Sherlock. That, it's not a surprise. None of these things are new to us. So, I mean, good. People keep saying it. It gives us more to talk about and draw some balance through.
I mean, it's also true, if you're, playing devil's advocate, that every Rockstar game for the last couple of releases has been delayed by quite some period in some cases, or there's been quite a big gap between trailer 1 and release date, normally about 2 years. Now, is GTA 6 on the same path of those previous releases? I don't think it is. I think we are in a world where, loads of the world has changed since even the release of Red Dead 2. The structure of Rockstar and their management has changed since then.
Yeah.
Like, there's been so many changes that have happened that to go, well, previously they've always done, roughly 2 years between trailer 1 and release, and that's definitely what's going to happen for GTA 6. I think is another, unfounded piece of evidence, and I really think, they have been working on this game for 10 years, like a generation.
Yeah, it'd be 12 years by the time of release. It's crazy.
So I think as part of that, they would have tried to put some things in place that say, okay, once we announce a date, this time we're going to stick to that date. Now that, the date of 2025, I would say they're going to stick to. Once they start putting seasonality or months on that, is when it becomes real. Like, at the moment, it's 2025. If they start to say spring, fall, summer, something like that, I think you get a bit more of a window. But until that point, I think 2025 is the only safe bet.
Yeah, and I think the truth of their finances are, once it's slipped out of the last quarter of their 25 financial year, which is January to March 31st, I guess where it drops in the following financial year, even if it was early 2026, it does make a difference because it affects the amount of copies they're going to sell, but it's still reported within that financial year, and then maybe it gives them more latitude to, if they're going to delay, then they can really delay to get it right. But I think as long as there's a dream of getting it out in fiscal year 25, they'll try and keep that dream alive.
Yeah, of course.
And the rest is us, conjecturing on a podcast every week.
Well, just to wrap this up then, we did get a message from a Harry Heath, who's from Australia, who said, "Hey guys, love the podcast heaps. I'm from Australia and we have an interesting betting scene. You can bet on GTA 6's release month. And I thought it would be a fun idea to throw this one at you for one of your podcasts for a bit of fun." So he's actually sent us a a screenshot which we put up for you guys. Now, obviously, this is only in Australia, and if you're going to do any betting, please do it sensibly, know your limits. But you can actually bet on the release date, and currently, the one with the best odds, well, second best odds, is October 2025, which, you know, if the bookies in Australia are saying so, the other one of that is January 2025, which I think is a madness. Don't
Oh,
money on that.
Insane. I mean that politely.
But that, you know, it ranges from 4-1 to 7-1, up to like November, December 2025, a 7-1. January 2026 or later, only 6-1. But if I was going to, Harry, to put $1 on any of these release dates, I think you're in with a good shot of October 2025, even though the odds are reasonably low.
Based on the information as it stands, and if we believe everything they've said, I would say their intention is to launch in March 2025. Do I think that will be the reality?
Well, 5-1, I can give you on that.
Well, there we go. So I believe like their intention is March 2025. The reality, I'm sort of inclined to go with you. So like 6 months. So I would say something, you know, I don't know, take your pick between September and November in that year. But I will feel more certain in that prediction once they've had the earnings call.
Yeah, which is when all the odds will change, I imagine.
Yeah.
So, Harry, you might need $2, one for October and one for March. You know, spread betting, give yourself multiple options. But it's quite interesting that you can actually bet on release dates like that in Australia. I definitely don't think you can do that here in the UK. So that is interesting. Let us know if you end up putting $1 on anything, and everyone else listening, let us know in the comments which of these dates that you would pick, and how much of your virtual money. Imagine if you could bet in GTA dollars. You could just earn it and then bet it on a...
Please gamble responsibly, people. That's all I'm saying. Or more responsibly, don't gamble at all.
All right, well, let's move on then to, some hot Trailer 2 talk. We've done when's the game coming out. Now let's do when is the next trailer dropping. Now this is in reference to, there's been a clip circling around the internet on Twitter and on forums saying that this is the background audio for Trailer 2. Now, I think me and Dan listened to this the other day, but let's, in case none of you have seen it, we will play it for you now.
Open it! Come on! Just listen to me. We have more guns and the fucking VPPD. Take time, whole lot of precious time. It's gonna take patience and time.
Now, apart from that being an absolutely banging tune,
Yes.
I think my first thoughts of when I saw that was, hey, this has a chance of being legitimate. Like, the song is good. I can see that being used in a trailer. It sort of fits the vibe. But actually, on like a second listen, the audio lines that they're using at the beginning of that trailer is actually from the 2022 leaks, which is a clip of Lucia in a diner. And if you actually really listen to that, you can hear the music in the background from that clip over the top of that that music track. So it immediately screams, well, this is absolutely just fan-made. There were a few other things that are worth pointing out, just in case more of this happens in the future. The VPPD, not a real thing. I think it should be VCPD, like Vice City Police Department, or a different one. That feels a bit like a red flag. And then there was another bit you picked up on, Dan, on the other bits of vocals from some of the people, right? That in previous GTA trailers, there's not really big F-bombs.
It just felt a little bit aggressively sweary to me, in the way that, like you said at the start, you can see the edges of this jigsaw, where it's cleverly done to be plausible, and a word that gets used often in politics, this idea of truthiness, where you say something that sounds incredibly plausible, but it doesn't actually stand up to scrutiny. And I feel like this is that, where someone of a sort of certain degree of, it sounds really patronising, a degree of intellect and smarts has put together a thing that has the ring of truthiness, but doesn't really stand up to scrutiny for exactly the reason you said. That's just the clip from the leak, and you can actually hear the underpin of the audio soundtrack from the leak. What are you doing, man? Like, that's insane. And the choice of, GTA is a violent game. It's aggressive. It's adult. It's sweary. Sure, but in the trailers, to use so many expletives feels a little bit crass, and I would say a little bit un-Rockstar-like, because the idea of trailers generally, unless you're releasing a red band trailer that's like mega scary or bad or whatever, is you want as many people as possible to see it and not put people off. So you would do that by not filling it full of horrendous potty mouth expletives. Now, I think you went back, James, and kind of tested that a bit to say, how often have Rockstar used swears in their trailers? Like, what did you find from that?
Well, I think, as you say, there is a difference here, and producer Nathan, get ready with the beepy button. But there is a difference between them releasing a trailer for, and say, like a mainstream source, and by that I don't mean, everyone on the internet. I mean like TV and cinema, and them releasing a trailer that they know is just probably going to be used in the confines of the internet. So all of the GTA 5 trailers definitely didn't have what we would consider, I don't know, like the top line swears, your F-bombs, that kind of stuff. None of that was in there. In Trevor's trailer, when they released the 3 trailers for GTA 5 that had Michael, Franklin, and Trevor versions, Trevor does say dick. I don't think we have to beat that in his trailer, which I would say, and there is, I think, an official scale of like swears on TV and what you can say, how many times you can say certain levels. I'm going to suggest like dick is probably lower down that level. I think you'd get away with that. Not on actual TV, broadcast TV, but you could beep it out and it would still work, and that was fine. In the GTA 5 gameplay trailer, which was the long 4 minutes version that was commentated, this, giving you this is the world of GTA 5, and it's full of activities and characters and all of that kind of thing. Yeah. That does have quite a lot more swearing in it. They say, ready, Nathan? I mean, it's going to make it worse if you beep it. Anyway, arsehole, bitch, cheap, that kind of thing, because they're using clips from the game to make a point, which I think, in that sense, there has been swearing in trailers before, but those trailers were very specifically for a very certain audience, which were people who were like fans of the game and going to watch all of the GTA content.
I don't know the length of that gameplay trailer, but I imagine the frequency of the swears was not back to back to back. It sounds ridiculous.
Well, that bit, some of it was because it's all
quite dense for the swearing.
Yeah,
was it?
Okay, and it's all
sort
of like Michael's bit. But in terms of like the actual length, it's 4.5 minutes, and maybe they say 3 swears, so it does probably balance out in a longer thing. But again, this was only made for the online audience. That kind of asset, as they would call it, is never going to go anywhere else other than on Rockstar's website and on YouTube and that kind of thing. What I think they're making with Trailer 1, GTA 6 Trailer 1 and GTA 6 Trailer 2, I'd imagine, is a much more palatable look at the world, where it could, in some stages, like be put on broadcast TV or be shown in a cinema, and those kind of things aren't going to contain the level of swearing that is in that fake Trailer 2 background audio.
Yeah, and I guess to the wider point, this feels fake anyway because we think we know the provenance of the initial bit of audio.
Yeah, it's absolutely not real.
Yeah, and the rest is truthiness. Like, you know, tires squealing, guns firing. Yep, sounds like GTA.
Yeah.
Like, of course it could be, but you know, I haven't. It would be interesting to listen purely to the audio of trailer 1 and the cadence of it and see how it overlaps. But it feels almost, but not quite true to me. So good job. Don't think it's true. I did laugh at the point where the actual video or leak was shared on X with the Buy My Coin, which is interesting. Why, James? What's that? The link to the Buy My Coin?
I mean, it's just the same. Like, so that's how trailer 1 leaks. It had originally had a massive like Bitcoin watermark on it,
Yeah.
so you could see the trailer. And I think it's probably how I first saw the trailer. And it had that massive watermark, and you looked at it and went, "Yeah, this is actually the trailer." Which is then what prompted Rockstar to release the whole thing,
Yes.
because they don't want their trailer being out there with, you know, buy Bitcoin all over it. And equally, like, the quality was absolutely terrible. So you don't want the big announcement of your big game to be marred by, you know, less than 720p footage of your, you know, next gen game.
Yeah, so I think we're saying not true, but good effort.
Absolutely not true. Good choice of song, though. Can
Yeah.
I see that song being used in a trailer? Yes. Can I see 1,000 other songs being used in a trailer? Also, yes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really say anything. I think, you know, it's a good trailer track choice. Even if Rockstar were going to use that, are they going to continue to use it? I would still say yes. Like, I think the production of those trailers are going to be almost set and quite a long way down the line now of, like, they'll know which tracks they want to use for which trailer when it's going to be released. They'll probably know which scenes they want to put in each trailer, and those will be being worked on now. So I don't think it's going to change anything from Rockstar's point of view if by some miracle someone manages to guess the song that's going to be used for trailer 2. They're just going to continue on as they have been.
I've got one interesting sort of sidebar with this. Every week when we submit this show to our lovely producer, Nathan, I often say in our Slack group, legend, right? And
Right.
it got me thinking, this is how my mind works. Has anyone ever produced a critical piece of work called Legend of a Leg End?
Haven't you said this before? Or did you just say this to me?
I think I said it to you in real. And you know where this is going. And do you know who has released a piece of work, Legend of a Leg End?
I really hope that it's our friend George Harrison.
George Harrison, anthology number 1,
Aw.
Legend of a Leg End. Thought that was a nice way to tie that particular bit in a bow. But what was the interesting bit you put at the end about has this previously featured in a GTA game before?
Well, I was like trying to quickly, before we went on air, work out if this had been featured on a GTA soundtrack before. I thought it had. I thought it was in a GTA Vice City or Vice City Stories, but from looking at the track listings, it isn't in there. So if any of our listeners know if it has been featured in a previous GTA soundtrack, please let me know and stop me from going mad and thinking that I've heard it while driving around the streets of one of the cities. All right, the next topic that we've got, Dan, is some strangers and freaks. We're going to call them missions, but they might not be missions. We talked about this a few episodes ago about some of the real life social media clips and how it related to real life incidents. And I said I was going to go away and find some that I think might be able to become GTA 6 events, stories, world happenings, that kind of thing. So I'm going to throw a few out at you and we can see just how likely they are. And actually, this is quite a good segue with the first one, because I think I could absolutely see this appearing as like some kind of ad or a radio station. Now, this was from 2018. Now, we know that most of the social media clips that we saw in the trailer are from around 2017 to 2019. That appears to be when the core bit of research about Florida and Miami and those kind of events were happening at Rockstar. So this one matches up perfectly, and it's from the sheriff saying, "Are you a meth dealer? We want to help you out. Just call us at 911 or 727 847-8102 and we'll gladly test your meth for you before you start selling it. And a Florida man actually did that and then got charged with dealing meth because he rang them up and wanted them to be to be tested. But that statement from the sheriff is exactly the kind of parody thing you could imagine hearing on a GTA radio and going, haha, that's funny, imagine idiots who were doing that. But it turns out, as we're beginning to learn, there's a lot of Florida man stories that actually turn out to be true.
It's an amazing story. Also, like, the police aren't telling the truth here, are they? They're not really going to help you. It's really funny. I would also say, and this is a horrific aside, how often do you see a mugshot picture and think, crikey, they've got the wrong person?
Well, I'm going to leave that. There, Dan. Let's leave that to linger as we. So, I'd like to know, that kind of thing. I'm going to say definitely on some kind of level. I'd love to see that in the game. Are we ticking that off of the Rockstar boardroom? Going, yeah, all right. Let's write that.
It's on the if we get time, it's in.
Okay, good. Next, something I can see happening as something you might come across is a Florida woman high on meth. There's a recurring theme here.
Yeah.
Ran around naked in the park because she believed a giant spider was on her. Any more context you need to that? Well, I'm going to give it to you. This is from August 2018 as well, and a Florida woman was arrested on Sunday after police say she stripped naked and ran around a public park because she believed a giant spider was on her and had to get away from it. They arrested the 40-year-old woman, saying she was completely nude and knew numerous people in the park at the time of the incident. Again, I can quite easily see us walking around the world through what looks like a very nice, pleasant park and then just a naked woman running around screaming about a spider. That is classic GTA fodder.
And classic for a woman to freak out surrounded by 8 leg ends. You can cut that if you want. That's terrible.
Nope, that's staying right in. So those are two, I think, like asides that I would see that could you just come across and you'd be like, oh, have you met the giant spider woman? And you'd be like, no, I need to go and find her. The next couple are things that are a bit bigger and I think could become Strangers and Freaks missions. Now, this is a Cold War mystery called The Floating Crates. I haven't named it that. That is just the name that it was given.
Yeah.
Now, this happened in 1967 when the US Coast Guard found an 18-inch square crate floating off the coast of Hellenade in Florida. Might not have said that right. Now, in real life, this location is north of Miami Beach, which in the game would be Vice City Beach. So it puts it in prime real estate for making this kind of thing happen. The crate was marked Made in USSR and was addressed to the Institute of Mineral Resources in Cuba. When it opened, it contained 7 inflated yellow balloons. And 2 days later, a similar crate was found 135 miles south of Marathon Key in Florida. When this crate was opened, it was empty. Oh.
Amazing.
The information officer for the Coast Guard said both crates were marked in English and were partially covered in barnacles. The barnacle accumulation indicated that the crates had been in the water for about 2 months. The balloons were made of heavy yellow rubber with a black rubber stopper on one end. They were fully inflated and about the size of a cantaloupe.
Correct.
What's cantaloupe?
Cantaloupe melon.
Okay, melon. The Coast Guard said that they were only filled with air. According to the stamps on the box, the origin was Leningrad, USSR, and destined for Havana, Cuba. The gross weight was listed at 50 kilograms, about 110 pounds, but the balloon-filled crate only weighed 30 pounds, about 13.6 kilograms. To this day, the yellow Russian Cuba balloons remain a mystery.
What was in those balloons? What did the communist brethren share in those balloons?
Well, that's the big question, and I think might hopefully be answered in the game. I think the more interesting thing here is the connection between Florida and Cuba, which we have debated before whether we're going to get some of those islands in the game, and if this kind of incident is going to be in the game, it hints towards maybe we are going to get to see Cuba in some form. Now, spoilers incoming, so if you don't want spoilers, fast forward a couple of minutes. In the leaks that came out in 2022, it did contain reference to a Cold War puzzle in one of the world events. Now, could this crate mystery be related to that? Yes. Could it be taken out of the game in development? Also yes. So again, let's balance this a little bit. But I think there's some things here that would say, this is a big mystery. If you're researching Florida and things that happened around that time, this is a prime one, and it feels like a kind of thing that would be great for a GTA 6 mystery.
Yeah, to Cuba or not to Cuba, it just seems it's too big and rich that I think if you explore it, you're almost obliged to create an entire representation of one of the world's most unique political structures and geographies. And I wonder if that's asking a little bit much. Maybe you'd have to nod to it to a sort of not quite Cuba. But it's a great location. It's got. I laugh as I think about it. I always think of, when I think of Cuba, I think of, I'm Tony Montana, a political prisoner from Cuba. From Scarface. That was in case you thought, was that actually Scarface who walked on set?
No, I didn't need it, but
it was me.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of great things in there that could be related to one of those Strangers and Freaks missions. Another one, which also ties into things we've talked about before, is Flight 19. This was a group of Avenger torpedo bombers that vanished during a routine mission in 1945 known as Flight 19, and is one of the most enduring aviation mysteries. So we've already ticking the box. It's happening in Miami. It's a great aviation mystery. Are we going to put this in? I mean, yes, please. This was a number of training flights that were scheduled from the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, December the 5th, 1945. Now, Fort Lauderdale is on the east side of the map in real life, just up from Miami. But I think we believe that this has now been moved out of there further west. So gives them some kind of place to go and put this. So the weather during most of the day was forecast to be good, but there was a storm front coming. Heavy rain was expected to arrive by the early evening. All flights were scheduled to be back safely at the base before the storm arrived. But then something strange happened. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, during the afternoon of December 5th, suddenly transponded the position of his flight over 200 miles southwest of Flight 19's real position. The tragic chain of circumstances that followed all came from this first inexplicable error. The final few hours of life he had remaining, Taylor remained convinced that Flight 19 was somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico when they were actually over the Atlantic. So this ties into, I think, the Bermuda Triangle and how flight paths were getting messed up, altered, confused at that time. Could you find a crashed plane that referenced some of this stuff? Is the Bermuda Triangle going to exist? I think we've talked about it before and were reasonably convinced that it should be in there.
Yeah, I'm more yes on the Bermuda Triangle than I am yes on Cuba.
Okay, but you only need to get to the other side of the Bermuda Triangle, and then you get to.
Well, that's the thing. You can't go. You can't. It's
Right.
It's an invisible mystery zone and a vortex of confusion. So,
I mean, that would help spin the plane back around every time you're going that way.
Exactamundo, and it saves a hell of a lot of rendering on an island that's quite geographically complex.
Fine. Okay. Well, we're all right with that one. Flight 19 should be happening. The remains of 8 people were found in Fort Myers. Now, Fort Myers is on the west side of the map, near Port Gellehorn in real life. But this is in March 2007, so it's a bit before research time, but it is quite a big story. They discovered the skeletal remains of 8 people in a tract in Fort Myers, Florida. After a surveyor reported seeing human bones, the bodies lay unburied for possibly 8 years or more, clustered closely enough to suggest a serial killer may have used the swampy area as a dumping ground. Leaves and other natural debris covered the victims, who ranged from 18 to 49 years old and had no signs of trauma on their bodies. Now, this, again, is perfect. We know Rockstar like the idea of putting serial killer clues in their game. There was one in GTA 5, there was one in Red Dead 2. If they wanted an example of another one and could continue this mystery a bit more in-game, do you go and discover the bodies? Are they all over the map? Who was the serial killer? Do a bit of investigation. Even lean into some of the LA Noire style thing. That kind of theme has been present in quite a lot of Rockstar games. I would be surprised if they didn't do it. This feels like a good base for another serial killer mystery.
A multi-part detective mystery side mission would be a good complementary piece of gameplay and would make a lot of sense. Not set in Cuba.
Now, the quick ones before we leave you today is Alice in Wonderland. This is from 2017, smack bang in the middle. A Florida man was arrested for breaking into a liquor store under construction and causing over $100,000 worth of damage. The man used a forklift on site to commit the crime and even threatened police while in the forklift when they attempted to make the arrest. Authorities stated the man identified himself as being from Alice in Wonderland and claimed that a hookah-smoking caterpillar was to blame for his reckless actions. Absolutely brilliant, that story. Doesn't need any further investigation.
Send.
I would love to see
Approved.
A man who thinks he's from Alice in Wonderland driving around the streets.
Approved. The only note on the script would be, can we say it's actually Alice in Wonderland, ? Legal rights, ?
Well, isn't Alice in Wonderland out of copyright now?
Approved.
Yes. But what this does lead to is that there is I've found a new map. The map looks like this, which actually, based on our previous conversations and things, is, in a dream world, fairly accurate to what we were saying with, how do they include Orlando, how do they include Tampa, and ties into all of these things that I have found, just from research, being able then, you're able to place them on the map to say, yeah, look, in GTA land, they would be here, 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 and here. So, little side bit of information, but I thought this map was interesting.
Yeah, it's just like a little squashy bit of reality. They've taken the map and squanched it down, and feels quite plausible. Equally, do I feel this is verified and true? No, but it's incredibly plausible and would tie up with a lot of what we've done in terms of research and stories they could tell from around the region.
Yeah, I mean, some of it definitely looks a bit big. Like, the whole city bit of Miami probably spews too far into the grasslands area and that kind of thing. We know that some of these things don't line up, but I think it's an interesting thing to look at, given that we know, people have been saying, sources have said that the map is going to be much bigger than anyone expects. This would tick all of those boxes. As we've previously discussed, can they make 3 cities that feel alive and big and have loads of enterable buildings? Big shrug, don't know, maybe, but it's so much work, but it would be amazing to see a map like this.
And my conclusion would be, what a senior producer at Rockstar might know that he hasn't told the staff is, Fort Myers, delete it.
Well, I mean, that would be quite the thing to be doing at this stage. But let's see how many people want you as senior producer at Rockstar then, Dan.
I'm clearly joking, but as I keep referring to, the Las Venturas section in GTA San Andreas isn't far off a thing that got made in the last week of production. It was essentially the set from Blazing Saddles. So I think if they're committing to a city, they've got to commit hard. They can't get away with that anymore.
No, and this makes it look like they're making 3 cities as opposed to what they've always previously done, which is one city.
That feels stretchy.
It feels like a big leap.
Yeah.
But, it's 2024 right now and 2025 when that game comes out. So it would be the most ambitious project they've ever done. Let's see what happens. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Thank you all for listening this week. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already subscribed. Follow us on Twitter at GTAVOclock. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of those services, please give us a rating. 5 stars would be lovely. Dan, thank you very much for joining us this week. We will be back next Wednesday at 6 o'clock for another GTA 6 o'clock.